Posers and Punks. I'm Jessica Lee for Advice. We've got our other lovely host from Only Posers, Sarah Lezak. Is that how you pronounce that, my dear?
Yes, it is.
Lovely.
I was wondering, so.
So today's guest is the lovely Anna Coffman, resident of Asbury Park, member of FlexiGlass, and actually one of our guest artists for Women's History Month. She did some featured educational spots about women in history over the month of March. And we are so pleased to have her as our guest for Advice today. Welcome.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. Yeah, we're extending Women's History Month.
Yes.
Because why not? We deserve more than a month anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it's Women's History Life.
Yes. Women run everything.
Beyonce wasn't kidding when she said who run the world. I mean, and whatever she says is law, quite frankly. So, but yeah, we're so happy to have you, Anna. I mean,
Thank you.
I feel like you've been a ghost member of the podcast for a long time, just because of all of the help that you've been giving.
I've been here for
Matt
moral support.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, not necessarily always something that was on the screen or anything, but organizing events. And actually, I mean, especially lately in the great city of Asbury Park, I know you've been putting in a lot of hours canvassing for the rent control vote that's coming up soon.
Yes. we can start off with that, and then I
think we should lead with that. It's just really, I mean, we could lead with it. We can pick it up later as well. It's really worth mentioning. So do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
You can't read this, but I'm holding it up. This is the flyer for the April 20th vote for rent control in Asbury Park. I'm going to start off by saying that the City Council has signed on a rent control ordinance already, and I'm going to actually repeat myself and say rent control ordinance. There's been a lot of misinformation spread by opposition. The rent control that we are supporting right now, not only does it cap the rent at 4% of the CPI, but it is not only going to stop rent costs from raising in just disgusting amounts over time here in Asbury Park, but also offers other protections to renters. So, for example, if you have electricity issues or if you have any sort of utilities or any sort of problems, I'm talking leaks, vermin, cockroaches, you can actually apply for deductions from your rent. And not only will that, prorate your rent when you're experiencing issues, but it will also incentivize landlords to take care of these issues before you even move into the building. So your annual inspections will be taking place where inspectors go into these rentals and they go and they inspect the place and they make sure that you're not being overcharged for certain utilities. They make sure that you have working plumbing and electricity and that you don't have cockroaches. I say these things because these are things I have experienced as a renter in this area. And I'll shout out the website at the end of the podcast so you guys can look into it. It's April 20th. If you are registered to vote in Asbury Park and you have time on April 20th, go and vote. If you are getting your mail-in ballot, if you haven't received it already, you should be receiving it any day now. I've been out canvassing. I actually met Andrea, who works with the Asbury Park Affordable Housing Coalition yesterday. And
that's APAHC_NJ on Instagram.
Yeah, so if you see APHC rent control, that's them. It's the Asbury Park Affordable Housing Coalition. Believe me when I say, when you see this Protect Asbury Park Instagram, this Protect Asbury Park group, they are the opposition. They are representing landlords, they're representing developers who really make up a very small percentage of the people here in Asbury Park. I believe it's over 80%, it may have been 85% of Asbury Park residents are renters. And the rent control that they introduced, the City Council and this opposition to us, only covers 30% of renters. And if you live in a building that only has, I think, 5 or less units, you're not even covered at all whatsoever. And ours covers, what was it, I have it right here, 95% of renters in Asbury Park. It's a lot of people that rent that are covered by our rent control ordinance. You see this Protect Asbury Park stuff, they don't actually represent, they're kind of making out to seem like they represent tenants. I am an Asbury Park tenant. I rent in Asbury Park. I've actually been renting in Asbury Park on and off for the better of the past 4 or 5 years. Believe me when I say they don't represent us. The Asbury Park Affordable Housing Coalition represents us. and the rent control that we are voting on April 20th, please vote yes. We will not get the opportunity to do this again for at least 10 years. So if this vote does not go through, we will not get the opportunity to even discuss another vote like this for 10 years. So it's now or never. And we've really been going out in full force. I was out with Andrea yesterday. We were like, not chasing people down necessarily, but the best thing to do in Asbury Park, especially in my district. So I'm in District 6 of Asbury Park, which is up like in northern east side of Asbury. There's mad people walking dogs. So our game plan was
That's
like,
how you get
okay, that's how you get him. And we both, myself and Andrea, we lost our dogs in the past couple of years, so we didn't have the ability to go out with our own dogs. But we're like, we're gonna just go after these dog walkers.
You
All
can
the
still
nice
meet
people in the
lots of
world.
dogs in this
Yeah.
line of work.
Nobody was upset. We were very like unassuming. We're just like, hey, do you have a moment to talk? It's the middle of a pandemic. We're trying not to get too close to people, but everybody was really happy to talk to us. Not only were they happy to, some people knew about the vote and they were planning on voting yes. Some people didn't know about the vote at all whatsoever, so we were very happy to reach them. And some people had been reached by the opposition first. And the first thing that they would say is, oh, isn't this gonna raise taxes? First of all, it's not. And that's misinformation that's being spread by the opposition. It's not. And also, newsflash, if you are a property owner in Asbury Park, property values are rising, taxes are gonna rise. That has nothing to do with this vote. It's irrelevant. If you're a property owner, you're registered to vote in Asbury Park, I encourage you also to vote yes, because it's not going to affect you. But what it is going to do is it's gonna protect the people that live in Asbury Park currently. Not only is it gonna protect like low and middle income families and individuals, but it's also like gentrification. You know, we could really go into like how this town has evolved, how the city has evolved.
We have time.
Yeah, this city has evolved a lot over the past like 5 to 10 years, and I think there are a lot of people who are grateful for certain parts of the city, like, you know, seeming safer, right? But you know, a few people I spoke to yesterday, also white females like myself, who live on my street. So my next door neighbor said that when they moved into their building, their landlords told them, oh, I can't wait to get more of you in here. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because a lot of landlords are trying to push people of color out of these buildings. They're trying to push families that have been living in this town, this city, for generations out. And we don't want that. It's racist, and it's not what we're standing for. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And you can get more information about the rent control vote at, I believe it's apwantsrentcontrol.com.
Yep.
So, I mean, and also if you have any questions, like, you can DM us on Instagram. Only Posters Don't Listen. I know Black Mad Snaps would be more than happy to answer your questions, and he posts frequently with updates as well. And this is happening. What's today? The 6th?
It's coming up quick.
It's in 2 weeks from today.
Yeah.
And this episode will be posted as soon as possible.
Okay, cool. That would be wonderful.
After
Yeah, I
ASAP.
mean,
Yeah.
who needs editing? Let's post this raw.
This is a really important thing, and I'm really happy to be involved with it. I know we're all really happy to be involved with it because, like I said, we're only getting, this is like our one chance to get this done in the next 10 years.
Because in 10 years, when it is something that's able to be discussed, there's not going to be enough people left in town
No, exactly.
that would want such a policy in place, because they will be the ultra rich, the gentrifiers, and it is unfortunate that we even need to think in terms of that long term. But if we, I mean, you know, you try to be as hopeful as possible when it comes to something like this, but like, I mean,
Yeah, hoping for the best doesn't work when the opposition does not care about the average person. And like, I can just tell you the history of my building. So the building I'm living in currently, on 7th Avenue, I lived there for 2 years. I moved there in a desperate situation. I had to get out of my previous building. And when I moved in, there were people that had been living there for 11 years, 15 years. They've been living there for a long time. They've seen the evolution of Asbury Park, and the landlords were at the time trying to push those people out. They were raising their rent like exponentially and in hopes of getting them out. And I remember one of my particular neighbors, she actually lawyered up and she's like, I'm not paying this rent increase. And they settled with her. They're like, oh, we'll move you to a different building, yada, yada, yada. So over the 2 years that I lived there, I saw every single resident that lived there at the time go. Now, then I moved into,
Hey,
I
we
lived
were
in
neighbors for a while.
Jess's backyard. I was just camping out. It was a good time.
She had her little tent set up, and I'm not even lying about that. Oftentimes, she would sleep in a tent.
Yeah,
between
that
our
is
houses.
true. As soon as I had any sort of outdoor space, I pitched my tent and I slept out there. That is true. But her and her family have this beautiful little back house that I lived in for 2 years. I moved there specifically because the rent was getting too high in Asbury, and I could not take up the offer of living there. But now I've had to move back into Asbury. I moved back into the building I used to live in, and all of the residents that were there, even when I lived there less than 2 years ago, are gone. So that's what's going to happen.
Wow.
These buildings are having really high turnover rates because people could probably afford to maybe rent there for a year at a time, and then they have to leave. And I haven't looked at the video myself, but I've been told by the people that I've been, canvassing with the Asbury Park Affordable Housing Coalition, that my landlord, who will remain nameless at this time, was in a discussion with them at some point, who is on lines, saying like, oh, I'm essentially entitled to these people money.
Ooh.
People are going to come to this town, they're going to pay this money, I'm going to keep taking their money, and I'm going to keep raising the rent. Can I afford to live there right now? Barely. Barely, honestly. And next year, am I going to be able to afford to live there? Probably not. If the rent is going to be raised.
I mean, eventually I think we should just all buy a punk house and move in and all have like an 8-bedroom John.
We're gonna have to afford to own a property in this
real. I mean, not that I would be opposed to that, but it shouldn't have to fucking come to that.
Yeah.
Especially in a town that is as diverse as this,
Yes.
When you have developers moving in and taking advantage of the hard work that the current residents have put in to improve their own town.
Yeah.
And in an attempt to drive those people out as well. It's fucking disgusting.
Yeah, the diversity is purposely being pushed out of this town, and that is what represents this town. This town by nature, it's very LGBTQ. Yeah,
what it
lots
is
of people
now.
of color. Hispanic people, Black people have been living in this city forever, and the fact that we want to just, now that we've been developing it for 6 years, 7 years, we want to push all those families out that have been living here for generations, who have seen this town go from, what it was in the 60s, 70s, and to now, I personally don't stand for it. None of us stand for it, and seriously, if you are registered to vote in Asbury Park, and I'll let you know, because I just moved back into town, I just re-registered to vote in Asbury, and I just missed the mark, but I'm still voting because I can submit a provisional ballot and I can still vote, and they'll, I think, count my vote after everybody else's. So if you're like, oh, I'm not even registered to vote, or I live here but I'm not registered to vote, as long as you have some document that can prove that you're a resident here, you can still do a provisional ballot and you can still vote. That's what I'm planning on doing. You should do the same if you're in, my shoes. It really matters a lot. So
Right, and even if you don't live in town, if you're not registered to vote in town, if you know anyone who lives
Spread
in
the word.
Asbury Park, tell them. Or even if you don't know if you know anyone in Asbury Park, still share that information, because it's really fucking important to the whole culture of our town, to the existing residents of our town, and anyone who aspires to live here as a person who has modest means. In general.
If you come to Asbury Park and you go to Langosta and you enjoy the free music, or you go to Cookman and you eat the food and you go, oh my God, I love it here, and you go to the beaches, spread the word, do your part, protect this city. We're trying so hard to do it. We're up against a lot. We're up against these big developers, these landlords. There's not even that many of them. We're not even up against that many people, but they have so much power that it's a lot of opposition that we're up against. And that's why I will be spamming my Facebook a lot the next couple weeks.
Anna came out of social media retirement for this vote. It's that important a cause.
Worth it, yeah.
And I believe it's worth it. Even though there's a lot to have to weed through on social media for anything that is of, I guess, value, or whatever you would want to consider it.
Recycled memes.
It's yeah. I mean, actually, I don't mind those.
Okay,
but
yeah.
I mean, I think one of the things about social media is you can really stay up to date on a lot of things, and even if you don't live in a specific area, you might have a follower who lives in that area that needs to be reached with that information.
Right.
And at the end of the day, like Anna was saying, we aren't actually up against a lot of people. It's just that they have a lot of influence. So the more people that we are able to reach who understand
No, we will
that
overpower
this
them.
is for the benefit of the average people, of the citizens of this town, of the people who've lived here forever, then we have all the power in that situation.
Like I said before,
We just have to use
85% of Asbury Park residents are renters. You know, if enough of those people are registered to vote and will vote yes, like we will win this thing. And I'm hoping for the best. We're all hoping for the best. We're doing our part. Do yours as well, if you have the ability
Thank
to.
you so much for doing your part, Anna. I mean, as a non-resident of Asbury Park, but an appreciator of the culture here and just someone who ends up in this town a lot. Hi, reporting at you live from Ghost Harbor Creative on, I think this is Bond Street.
We're on Bangs.
On Bangs, there we go, on Bangs. You see, I've outed myself as a non-resident because I don't know where the hell I am. But anyway, thank you so much for that information. And again, thank you for putting in the hard work, canvassing, spreading the word, for coming out of your social media retirement to spread the word. We really appreciate everything that you do. So actually, moving on to some other things that you happen to do. I also want to thank you for being a part of our Women's History Month celebration.
Thank you.
I feel like I have so many like questions about the process and about the research that you've done. I don't want to overwhelm you with that too much.
Well, I'll be interested to like hear also what your process
Yeah,
was too.
like
because you were
Sarah
doing
is
the
our
History
resident
Month reports, too.
historian, so I feel like this is a conversation that I can actually, I'll just sip my coffee. But I do want to ask, like, I know that you were doing like pretty much daily research and filming up, I would say every day or maybe every other day, and maybe stockpiling some others and actually getting some other women from the area involved as well.
Yep,
So
definitely.
our friend Tiffany Wallace, who is also from TikTok, from FlexiGlass, I'm like TikTok. It's ingrained in my brain. From FlexiGlass, did a guest spot or two, and then our friend Kim Obi as well did some guest spots on Bodega Cat with a 0. Follow her on TikTok.
Yeah, people had already taken my Instagram tag, so I had to improvise, but it's okay.
It's a tough time to be on social media these days. I don't know what kids are going to do in the future. Like, there won't be any words left.
I can curse on here.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, they're
Just
I mean, I
These are
broke the seal
fucked.
already, and like, I'm not going to pretend like this isn't an 18+ podcast. Like,
Well, our biggest fan just recently became 18.
that's right.
Aw.
Hey, happy birthday, by the way. I
Yay.
saw the post. I've never met you in real
Congratulations.
life, but I'm not even sure what your name is.
Alex.
The straight edge punk Alex, I believe.
Congratulations, Alex. It doesn't get any better from here. Just kidding.
But,
well,
congrats on adulthood's kind of neat,
It's
I guess.
cool. It is cool.
But
Oh, you know what? Actually, you know what? You're right. It's a lot better than being a teenager. Yeah.
don't get your hopes up
Yes.
too much. But we love to have you as a part of our 18+ club. Special shout out to you, Alex.
Also,
Thanks for being a fan. Thanks for being a friend.
special shout out to Spencer, whose birthday is today as well.
An Aries king.
Yes.
I wouldn't imagine. I honestly, of all of the things I could imagine that Spencer is, it wouldn't be an Aries. But I'll have to show us the rest of the birth chart. Excuse me, I had to be the astrology
shit
bitch for
about
a
that.
second. It's all right. I only know what the internet has taught me, which is probably, well, the internet's a great place to learn.
It is.
So you said that you did like your like daily like research and stuff. Was there anyone that you weren't already planning on covering for Women's History Month that you found out about and decided like, oh, I need to talk about this person? Not to go on a total 180 here or anything, but
Yeah.
like I feel like I learned a lot from your posts as well.
I did too. So when I was covering women, there was women I already knew I wanted to cover that I learned more about, or like for example, when I did like Malala, I had just finished her autobiography, so that was like a good one to do. There's women that Sydney, our good friend Sydney, who I think actually did she do a podcast with you guys recently?
She did a live stream with she did a live stream with Matt.
okay.
Yeah.
And it was actually very informative. If you go to Only Posers Don't Listen on Instagram, the entire episode was about abolition of the prison industrial
intersectionality
complex, and abolition of just police in general, and why abolition is the solution rather than reform. And that should be listed under, I guess, Sydney, what is her last name? Sorry.
Is it Novak?
Sydney Novak
Sorry,
and Matt
Sydney.
Daniels on IGTV on Only Posers Don't Listen. We watched the whole episode together, I believe, and I learned a lot. I mean,
Yeah.
it was very, very concise information, and definitely worth going back to a lot, actually.
It's very good.
Don't
It's
just
very
watch it
informative.
once. Really absorb it,
So,
y'all.
and it was good for me. So when I was at Rutgers, when I was completing my bachelor's, I found out like last minute, like, oh shit, girl, you still got 6 credits you got to fulfill, which they love telling you after they tell you, no, you're good to graduate.
Oh,
So-
education.
So yeah, so I was like, okay, cool. I'm gonna take some gender, sex, and race studies. So I took this one feminism class, and we talked a lot about intersectionality, which is a lot of what Sydney gets into, which is like where people kind of like meet multiple points of like oppression, essentially. Like when you have like, you know, a black woman, like a black trans woman, for example. And so, you know, like the new conversation with feminism is taking it. It's not just white feminism anymore. Like we're taking into account.
Thankfully.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean,
yes.
white feminism is like
Exactly.
dangerous, to be perfectly
Yeah.
honest.
Like
Well-
it's really important to discuss intersectionality. She got into that a lot, so and that's good. And I think like one of the people I covered in my Women's History Month, whose name I can't remember, which is I'm an asshole for because I covered so many women and some of them,
Sometimes
yeah,
thinking is
Yeah.
hard.
thinking is hard. I've been up since 5 a.m., but I'm here.
Yo, shout out to both of these ladies for
Yeah,
working,
right? You've been up
for
since
working
4
full
a.m.
shifts.
Yeah, since 4
Coming
a.m.
here to meet up, right, in like the dark ass hours of the morning. These ladies leave, they go to work, they work an 8-hour shift plus,
Ooh,
and then come here and do a whole podcast. Someone right here only had, what, 2 pizza rolls? Wait, bagel bites.
6 bagel bites, no coffee today.
And,
it's Kimberly Crenshaw who I'm discussing.
And
who
one
is-
PB&J since we need to have like an Only Posers nutrition like system. We'll create like one of those protein powders that you can just shake up
We need one of
for
those.
right. I mean, even just when you show up to the recording studio,
We'll just have them on hand.
gallery, right? And just like throw some powder with some tap water together, shake it up, and then you got your Only Posers brew. There's like, I don't know, dried whiskey somewhere in it as
I was
well.
I was just gonna
say.
There is also shout out to the empty bullet bourbon bottle that is holding up the camera that's filming this right now.
You make it work in this industry. Like, it's hard to get 8 or so people all aligned to make a plan for something of this nature, but somehow we all manage to do it. Even when it subverts our original plans, we make it
Yes.
work. Like the 25-minute sound check for these microphones. Like, we are not going to let that slow us down, or we will let it slow us down, but it's not going to stop us.
Yes.
Something like that. So you said that you, to get back on track,
To get back on track.
you said you had read Malala's
What
book.
was your degree in?
So I have a degree in psychology, and I'm actually going for my master's this summer. I'm going to Monmouth University to get my
Wow.
clinical mental health counseling master's, and eventually my LPC and my LPT. I'm looking to become a licensed therapist, and I've already put in like way too much damn school, and I'm planning on putting in more. So that's what it takes. But yeah,
It's all about the grind.
It's all about school.
Well, we so, as a person who could use a therapist, I appreciate you going into that field because we really need more mental health counselors
Yes, we do.
out in the world in general. And I realize that there's probably a certain measure of emotional burden that comes with going into that field. Yeah, I super appreciate that you are putting in the work to do that because mental health is so important.
it's important, and there's still so much stigma around it. Like my own mother, if you're listening to this, Joanne, I'm talking about you. My own mother, like, I know so many people that are close to me who are just not going to get therapy. I don't want to say never. I hope that's not the case, but there's so many people who won't get therapy because they're like, I don't need it, but you do need it. You have trauma, or not. Maybe you're just like a little stressed. Even if you're stressed about something that you think is stupid at the time, like we can all benefit from therapy.
Absolutely. It's
Shop
like,
arounds. Not every therapy is not a one size fits all. But there's so many people who either are afraid to get it or just like putting it off, procrastinating it. And there's also a lot of people who cannot afford it. So one like cornerstone of my career that I'm aiming for is like I also took some community psychology classes when I was at Rutgers. And community psychology is basically like saying, okay, a lot of people's mental illness, specifically like depression and anxiety, is based off of the fact that people live in poverty, that they don't have their basic needs.
Absolutely.
And so like if you fix things on a community level, like homelessness and poverty and making sure people are fed and taken care of, you can tackle a lot of mental illness at its root. And that's not the case for everybody, obviously, but that's something that I think is really important.
And it's definitely important to have an awareness of the fact that a lot of the root of mental illness is in that quality of life disparity between low-income people, between like the homeless as well. Like, if you are living, like, I guess below your means, is that the proper terminology?
I guess
The
so.
amount of psychological stress that comes along with that is debilitating, and it will really take a toll. But that also comes in line with the fact that mental health care is not really accessible for people who are of low income.
It's not. A lot of people get into this field thinking like, I'm going to be like an armchair therapist. I'm going to make a lot of money. Like, okay. And a lot of people, I feel like maybe it's kind of almost like lawyers too, where there's like a basis where they sometimes are offering their services to people who are low income, or they're working for a nonprofit. I worked for a nonprofit for a little while. I worked at New Hope, which is a behavioral health and substance abuse recovery facility. And it's a nonprofit. They have like their profit sector as well where they're getting paid. But I think it's so important, like obviously, you know, social workers don't even really get, I don't want to say they don't get paid that much. I guess it depends on what state you're in and whatnot and where you're at specifically. But these like psychologists who are like making loads and loads of money, and I don't know, that's not your only option. Like there's a lot of facilities, outpatient places, counselors, nurse practitioners. There's a lot of options you can look into and resources you can look into to get help. And I'm hoping that in my career I can offer services more to people who can't necessarily afford therapy, because it's something that should be accessible to everybody. And it's great that a lot of, I think under Obama's presidency, he made it more available for people to be able to get therapy covered by their insurance. Don't quote me on exactly what he did, but I know that that was something that happened during his presidency. But still, there's so many people that are uninsured, so there needs to be options. Yeah, there needs to be options for them too.
Yeah, and it's like I feel like the application process for a lot of the like government assistance for insurance is really complex.
Yeah,
and I don't know if it's done so on purpose necessarily, but I personally speaking, I had to table my registration process because I did not understand the questions, the information that they needed from me. So I just have like an open tab for NJ Family Care on my phone that I haven't touched in like 3 months.
Yeah,
I don't even know where to proceed from there.
I've known a couple people who have difficulty with like, and I personally like I'm lucky to be insured, but yeah, I've heard that some people have had problems with inaccessibility to that even. We don't have to go all into it, but I remember Matt's toe situation. He was applying to family care, and he had issues. So
our survivor of mild dismemberment, Matt Daniels.
Yeah,
I actually. So during one of the most recent Operation Street Sweeper, I will never say that correctly on the first attempt. It's such a tongue twister to me. But in the most recent Operation Street Sweeper, not today, but the one from last week, because we do it every Tuesday. Stay tuned. In Springwood Park, I found a Black Panther fully articulated action figure who was also an amputee. He's missing his arm from the elbow down, and I'm like, this is this is Matt Daniels.
Treasure.
Amputee Black Panther is the embodiment of Matt Daniels. I firmly believe, and I'm going to use him as, I wish I had brought him, our mascot.
You're gonna have to have like a shoebox of all the little treasures you find.
I have a drawer of them already. That's the fun thing about picking up garbage, is you occasionally will stumble across some treasures. But I think that whole movement, I guess, that we're trying to start picking up trash in town is just a good way to bring a little bit of light into this town once a week. Even just seeing some of the citizens of the town witness us picking up trash and seeing the joy that imbues in people who
it's
don't
good to connect with
have
people
as much,
that way.
Absolutely.
And some people were angry, and some people were. Well, I don't know if you were there with us the first.
think so.
Maybe it was the first day or the second time we did it. A few people were. It's not that they were angry; they were just kind of talking shit and whatever. And I was trying to make sense of it, and it is what it is. Some people roll through and they talk shit. But a lot of people were seeing we were doing Operation Street Sweeper. I probably can't say it right
hard. It's really hard.
Maybe we'll change the name, but it's great. We go out there. You don't need a license to go and pick up trash. Just get some gloves, heavy duty ones, and some garbage bags, and get some friends and just do it. And you'll meet a lot of people in the community, and a lot of people were really happy with what we were doing. A lot of people were saying, "Oh, what you're doing is beautiful." And we had a lot of people that were being kind of rude towards us. And the reality is, and I feel as if that part of town that we were in, a lot of the people in that community aren't used to kindness from strangers at all. So it could have been something to do with that. That was just my interpretation anyways, They're oh, these people are picking up trash in this park, but
I feel in a lot of cases when it comes to that reflexive negativity, it's kind of just their knee-jerk reaction to something like that. Why would people who aren't from around my area be picking up trash in my area? That's none of their business. Or whatever the root of that motivation would be. It's still we got ghosts stumbling into Ghost Harbor Creative through the back door, but they're all welcome, honestly. Although I'm actually surprised we didn't get any door notification from that one. In any event, so we start those usually we meet up in Springwood Park, which is actually a place that we have as FlexiGlass hosted some shows, done events at. So it's a nice community area. You're gonna go in front of the camera, Kyle. Did you know that? Guest cameo appearance from one young Kyle.
Podcast, so he's welcome.
Yeah, he can come onto the screen. That's okay.
Kyle may not be an official advice host, but he did the crap out of this audio. He took the helm for Matt Daniels, who's getting his second round of vaccinations today. But we love our guys. They do plenty of work behind the scenes, and
as the two women in the podcast.
Hello. As we continue to just be beautiful and charming, we've got a couple of crusty punks behind the scenes.
Exactly. Behind every crusty punk is a woman. Behind every woman is Matthew Daniels, as I like to say.
Because he backs the entire community of intersectional females.
So speaking of, to go all the way back to the Women's History Month posts,
let's go.
Tell me a little bit about your inspiration and what your process was for doing those posts, because I'm curious.
Well, so I appreciate you doing the whole month because I did half of it. I picked it up and I was like, I'm doing way too much, so I'm just gonna put this down.
It's a lot of work.
Come back to it, but never did. So I took from the zine because I read on the State History zine. So I would look at it every day and be like, okay, what is a woman that did something? Because there was actually a lot for some. I don't know. I mean, women do a lot, but there's not usually that many women that do things. And then I also had a website that was on this day, specifically for women, when women were born, what they did. And then besides that, it was just looking up women that were, important, where I related to, I think the last one I did, I don't remember her name, but she wrote
names are hard,
150 scripts for movies when it was becoming when they were adding sound to movies, like when they started that.
I see.
And I don't know
So
why.
like the early
yeah,
film industry.
So early, it would not exist without her, kind of.
Well, you can reference back to Sarah's posts to get that information. You can reference back to Anna's posts to get that information, but I'm pretty sure that's also something that's been reposted on Only Posters Don't Listen.
Yeah, it's on all of them are on the Only Posers Don't Listen Instagram page. Matthew Daniels, also, if you follow him, they're on his page. I believe he shared.
They're on his TikTok, my TikTok.
Yeah.
They're also on the Facebook, on the Only Posers Facebook, because that automatically gets posted to Facebook. They're everywhere.
I'm just going to go ahead and
They're all
confidently
over.
say you can find all of the information that we're talking about in the description below.
Yeah. So for me, like, you know, Matt had just done the the Black History Month posts, and he comes to me and he's like, and I've never used TikTok before in my life, and he comes to me and he's
Hell
like,
of a way to warm up to it.
yeah, he's doing it every day. So he comes to me and he asks, would you do a couple? I was like, yeah, I'll do a couple. And then that turns into, can you please do them every day and like have them done by this time, which I was happy to do. And so I don't know if you guys have ever seen, or you viewers have ever seen Billy on the Street. And
Billy.
it's a really funny show where this guy's out in New York City and he's just like putting people on the spot. And like one of the things he does, he's like, I'll give you $1 if you name a woman. And he goes up to to women on the street and just puts a microphone in their face. It's just like, name a woman. And they can never do it. They're like panicking because they're on the spot. And so that's how I felt when Matt first asked me to do the Women's History Month post. He's like, would you do them? And who would you do?
Like suddenly I forget every woman I've ever heard of.
Are
Am I a
women
woman?
real?
Like,
Yeah, and then the floodgates opened. Once I actually started thinking about it, I was like, wow, it became really overwhelming. Like, there are so many women that I didn't even know about in history that have accomplished so many things. Like, the very last one I did, Fatima Al-Fari. So I was in Morocco a couple years ago with my boyfriend, and we went to the oldest university in the world, which is in Fez. And it's such a beautiful place. Oh, God. Again, refer back to my video. I think it was 859 CE. 859 CE is when that university was started in Fez, Morocco.
A millennium ago.
We got this. But it's funny because I didn't even, or if they mentioned it, it was very casual. I didn't know that it was started by that university. It was founded by a Muslim woman. It started off as a mosque. Both her and her sister got an inheritance from their father, and they both opened mosques, and she expanded it into a full-service university, and it's the first university in the world.
Wow.
And it's still in service today, and it was very important at a lot of points in history, like when the Europeans started to come, the exchange between like European culture and like Muslim culture, that university played a really big part in that exchange. It's just a very cool thing. I thought it would be really cool to like finish off with her, but actually, Kim, we were just talking about Kim Obi, she's like, let me do a few more in the last few days of the month. And I said, sure. And I expected her to do like maybe one. So I had like organized 3 more, which is more than I even needed to do. So I ended up with a surplus. I had a surplus of people that I was trying to cover. And in the very beginning of the month, I was like, fuck this shit. I love doing it, but it's taking up so much of my time.
Yeah.
TikTok is like hard.
I honestly don't even understand
hard.
how people can post daily.
Multiple times.
I get overwhelmed trying to make sure I post once a week on that
Well,
app. Like,
also, you probably have a job, to quote Jerome, because Jerome is always like, oh, you can do it. Like, you can totally do like 3 videos a day. I'm like, we don't have a job where we can sit there and make TikTok.
if I take my phone out at my job to do anything besides maybe like check an urgent message, like that is not a part of the description.
Yes.
I'm not killing time while I wait for someone to come buy a spliff from me. Or like I don't know, what
They're
else do
not
they
making
have at
TikToks.
Wonderland?
You still gotta do the captions. The captions are annoying.
Oh, God, yeah.
The captions, fun fact, are coming to TikTok. They're going to have auto-generated captions.
But they're still gonna be fucked up, like the app does them.
Absolutely.
So you're still gonna have to edit them.
It's
which is fine.
I sat there and typed them all out.
That's
Could be
probably
me.
you might as well. I feel like it
Yeah.
would take less time than going and correcting all the edits. You can tell exactly what kind of mood I was in when I made those TikToks just by like looking at me when I'm making
Exactly, that's it.
them. Sometimes I'm just like, I'm on my 13th take of this. I just want to get it done with, and I'm talking faster than I knew I could talk. I didn't know I could speak.
Yeah, I could
Yeah.
say I actually was able to like perceive your improvement in the rate with which
It
you
got
spoke.
easier. It did get easier. That's the other
From
thing.
day
It did
1 to
get
day
easier.
30, like the progress was incredible. I learned it like 2-3 times as much by the end about an individual as I did in the beginning. But in any event, I learned a lot
Yeah.
to begin with. And while it is kind of a pain to do the captions and do all that reposting and whatnot, like it really does make it so much more accessible.
Yes.
Because you can't necessarily always be listening to the audio on your phone, but you can read the
My volume
captions
is
as you
always
go along.
off, and I'm very petty. So one thing that I keep in mind when I do anything on social media, which is not often these days, but especially with these TikTok posts, I keep in mind that anybody can be as petty as I am. If anything just annoys me or just like, I'm just, they say that you only have, I forget what it is, you only have like a couple minutes to actually catch somebody's attention when you're marketing.
Like
But
5 seconds.
Exactly. Well, now it's like that. So I
Yeah.
think like I learned
Yeah,
in
that's
marketing
that
class.
2021 attention span
Yes.
for you.
Yeah, so they say like you have like between 2 and 3 minutes to catch somebody's attention with marketing, and that was like an old saying. Now we live in the age of social media where it's way less than that. You're right, it's like 5 seconds or less. So if you don't catch somebody's attention right then and there, you will keep scrolling, and I know that. So I'm just like, all right,
Often that's me. So actually, very quickly coming back to like mental health awareness, I'm pretty sure recently I've come to terms with the fact that I think that I have like severe untreated ADHD. And
I thought the same thing. I think that I have ADD tendencies. I wouldn't diagnose
Yeah.
myself with ADD, but I definitely have the tendencies sometimes.
oh, absolutely. And when I look at a lot of the common I guess psychological attributes and or behavioral things, I'm like, shit.
Well, one thing like, and
That could have been me. If I go to a doctor and I
Yeah.
say analyze me, you know what, I would put money on it.
I'm not like saying that like, I have ADD and I don't want to disrespect anybody that does, but like there's a lot about ADD that's misunderstood that I've come to learn in the past few years. Like a lot of people think of ADHD and ADD in this one way, and it actually is different. Like,
I'm sure it's a lot more dynamic.
It is
than
more dynamic.
It's given credit for, especially
It's not just
considering
being
that the
hyperactive.
stereotypes
Yeah.
are just that they are a overly energetic person or that they can't necessarily pay attention to things, which is not always untrue, but there is so much more to, I think, any kind of mental health disorder
yeah.
than what is.
Well, that's what makes
part of
it.
the
That's what makes it
stereotype.
difficult sometimes to diagnose people, and that's why it's so important if you're struggling with anything to see a professional, because a lot of mental illnesses are co-occurrent. A lot of people experience them. There's no stigma necessary. A lot of people struggle with anxiety, depression, all sorts of mental illnesses. I think when you put people think illness and they're like and they like try to act like I don't have this illness, but the reality is it's very normal, and a lot of people they suffer from it at all different varying degrees, and like with ADD and ADHD, like I've learned, so this is one thing that made me think, this kind of sounds like me. It's like sometimes it's like the opposite of what you think it is. Like it's being like, I'm gonna get a bunch of stuff done today, and being like really, really like ready to go, and then getting nothing done that day, or getting like hyper fixated
When
on
that
one
executive
thing.
dysfunction hits.
Yeah, and the pandemic has really like brought that to light for me. Like there came a point where I was like, if I don't make a list of, no matter what I actually have to get done tomorrow, if I don't make a list of the things I have to do, none of it's getting done, and then I'm just gonna finish the day being like, oh wow, that was a waste.
Or you just
Note
go on
to self:
TikTok.
start making lists.
Well, I posted, that was actually like on my list sometimes. Like it's funny, if you go on my phone right now, which is being used to record this, there's just like, I have like outdated list for March that's like, okay, do this, do that, make the TikTok. No more TikToks for me for a while. We'll see though, maybe.
This is a form of social media that I think you deserve a break from, is the TikTok.
Yes, I encourage a break from the TikTok.
I'm more than willing to take a break.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like even just not scrolling through that app.
I hate doom
It's
scrolling on
like,
social media. That's part of why I abandoned it for the first place. Like I stopped using social media for 2 reasons. First of all, it was like becoming a waste of my time. And that's not to say that social media isn't great and that it can't be used as a tool to really help people build their brand and just to express themselves. But not only was I wasting time on it, like just scrolling,
That's
but
what Reddit
also,
is for.
I was learning about like a lot of people who I do respect and who I do love, and you know, everybody puts their opinions out there, like especially on Facebook, and I was like, I'm gonna start
Facebook
fighting
for
with
that
these
reason.
people.
I'm like, if you can write long form on this form of social media, like I don't want to be a part of it, because if someone that has like dangerously opposing views to me is able to write like a long-winded comment on some very short note that I have about, you know, whether it be about
Mass mandates.
even this town, like anyone who has like a slightly opposing view, like I don't want to have to block people. I don't like social media. I think was originally intended to be fun,
I think so, yeah.
but I can't even remember a time. But so yeah, don't hit me up on Facebook is what I'm saying.
Also, like I want to acknowledge that people, I'm not always right. People have differing opinions from me, and that's okay. And I want to support that, and that's okay.
That doesn't exist on Facebook.
On Facebook, it's like just like I see somebody post some ignorant shit, and like I've also probably been that person to post ignorant shit at times. Like I'll recognize that.
Oof, yeah.
I'm not trying to come after
On
my
this
friends.
day is like definitely gives me a harsh reading. From time to time, when I was like going back to the throwbacks, I'm like, I will. I'll delete
like,
I'm like, teenage
I
Jess
said
kind
that?
of sucked, like a lot.
It's okay. We all sucked, and like all the next generations are gonna have even a harder time, because at least we only had Facebook. We can just be like, let's just go
Let me
delete this stuff.
retroactively delete that post that they will automatically remind me I made a year ago or 20 years ago at this point. Actually, I feel like the oldest posts that I would have on there are like 13 years old.
Mine are like 7.
Well,
I wasn't allowed
good
to
on
have
you.
Facebook.
Okay, well, honestly,
For the best,
Good
maybe.
for-
exactly.
Nothing against you.
Good
Just I wish that somebody did that for me, so I wouldn't have to go and delete all these posts.
I mean, not to throw it too back, but I have vivid memories of a very like well-marked student that I was in the drama program at RBR with. Shout out Burbank Regional High School BPA program. Who was like crying on the phone, trying to tell her friend on her home computer to log into her Facebook and deactivate it because there were like photos of her drinking out of red Solo cups or drinking a PBR or something along those lines, when supposedly the school was going on kids' Facebook pages and like not expelling them, but like
and then they welcome
would
these
get
kids to
consequences.
come join sororities and fraternities to binge drink on their campuses. That I think is stupid too.
Yeah, I mean the glorification of that kind of a lifestyle.
Culture,
It's not the best. I mean, we could get into the culture of fraternities and whatnot for days about how toxic that is, but.
I had a lot
We
of
ain't got
fun
time
too.
for that. Let's
also.
talk about positive shit.
Well, hey, that shit was fun too. Sometimes.
True.
Not gonna lie.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, like, you know, it was again the kind of thing that was incepted for the concept of having a good time, but it just so happens that like a good time for a straight white male might not be a great time for anyone else.
Happy Women's History Month, guys. We're aware it's April, but we're gonna keep saying.
Did you listen to the other Women's History episode with Caroline?
With Caroline? No, I don't. It wasn't a live stream, right? It was this one?
Yes.
I didn't get a chance to listen to. That's another kind of like fault of mine, not going on social media. I do miss stuff that I really do want to like look into and see, but because I'm like on the outside world, I miss this stuff, so I apologize.
Not that you say who will bash men as much as that one did.
Oh wow, I gotta go back and listen to that. Well, I feel like I only had the chance to listen to like the first 10 minutes or so.
I love all the members of the podcast. They're all great. All the men, and you, Jess, of course. All the
Thanks.
men, but men suck.
Well, I feel like while we're on the topic, like one really important thing that I learned
I
in.
was gonna say not all men, but
No,
but we can say it, and it makes sense because we have met a lot of them.
Yes.
But it's I think with any kind of situation, like if you are the like of the group that's being criticized, you have to be humble. You can't like go on the offensive, reactionary to be like, but no, I'm good, therefore some are good. Like just sit back and think and consider. a little bit
Well,
where the other perspective is coming
I'm gonna make 3 points. So first of all, one of my favorite sayings, if it doesn't apply, let it fly. I say it all the time. I have men that I love very much in my life who are like, listen, like, I'm doing my best, I'm putting myself out there, I'm a feminist, I'm supporting these women, but I still get shit on. And I'm like, well, if it doesn't apply, let it fly. And another thing, maybe it's 2 points, but anyways, one thing that we learned a lot about in one of my feminist classes that I took at Rutgers is that the patriarchy affects everybody, men as well. So there is a higher incidence of domestic violence in countries where men are pretty much treated like pawns in the workforce. So like specifically like South America, just for example, where like, you know, men also are harmed under the patriarchy. Men are often like not given certain rights. Men are sometimes kind of just treated as like workhorses, and their lives are not valued. And not only is that inherently wrong, you know, from a humanistic approach, but also like I said, there is actually a higher incidence of domestic violence, and that just brings us back to like the violent cycle that creates. So like, you know, when talking about feminism, I think it's really important. And like, you know, me as like I'm a white person, I recognize my white privilege. I've done I spent a lot of time, you know, recognizing it and learning and reading. And like, if you're a man and you're listening to this, like, I'm not trying to attack you. Know that this might not necessarily be directly targeted at you, but like as women, we have to like, we are in danger every day of our lives when we go out there. You know, I haven't actually met many women who haven't been sexually assaulted. I've met way less women who haven't than have. And again, to reiterate my point, like, there are places in the world where the patriarchy affects men just as bad.
Yeah,
like
the negative impact on men by the patriarchy is something that I feel like is not as widely recognized, and yet they are some of the most victimized people by it. The societal pressures that come with the assumption that you're going to be a breadwinner, that you're going to never express your emotions. The amount of suppression.
That like what you work, like your work is the only valuable thing about you. There are countries in the world where as a man, like the only value to you is the fact that you work. And that's just harmful.
I mean, from a humanitarian standpoint, like every individual has their own special nuances about who they are as an individual, and capitalist patriarchy especially considers pretty much every individual that it pumps out to just be a worker, to be a means to an end for production, whether it be customer service, etc. And like, I mean, I don't want to get super duper crazy into this, but like, I have my own assumptions, beliefs that the pro-life movement that is outside of the like fundamentalist Christian standpoint has a lot to do with victimizing women and considering them just baby-making facilities that they can produce more workers for this complex that is rooted in capitalism. So, not to go on that super tangent, but I do want to kind of get that out there.
You might as well get it out there.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to have two women to talk to. It's not necessarily always something that within the confines, or I wouldn't even call it that, but within the parameters of our group that we're necessarily always able to do. So I want to thank you for being here with us, for taking the time to chat. And I realize that I don't even know what the time is, what we're working with.
Usually I keep track, but I didn't.
But that's okay. Like, we got other stuff on the schedule. Who cares?
We're fine.
But I mean, I think, you know, if there's anything else that we want to make sure to touch on, now would probably be the time to do so.
One last thing, I've already talked about it once. We're going to talk about it again. Go to www.apwantsrentcontrol.com if you want to learn more.
Perfect. So
about the rent control vote on April 20th in Asbury Park.
Okay.
Thank you so much. And that's APAHC_NJ on Instagram as well. So I feel like well, maybe end this on like a positive note. So
Anna, thank you.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for helping out the podcast. And
oh, absolutely.
coming
We
on.
so appreciate you being
yes.
like a one of our main supporters when it comes to creating content to actually like the important, you know, so-called more important parts of us as an entity is supporting the community, and I think that you are a shining example of that aspect of our mission. Is bettering the community, is just I mean, supporting people, whether it be the field that you're going into, the way that you've educated our followers about women in history.
Yeah.
And I mean, not that we really got time to mention it, but I think that you've probably had plenty of time to do so on other episodes that you've had a guest spot on. But I am so honored and pleased to be a part of FlexiGlass with you. If you don't follow us already, FlexiGlass_official on Instagram is where you can find our band. We do make music and we do covers and stuff of that nature, but really our mission as a group is, again, just to be a pillar in the community, to set a good example, to bring people together, and to make people happy. So we love you.
Bye. Mwah.
Signing off. Thanks for listening, everyone. Have a wonderful week. Black Lives Matter, protect Asian lives. Don't forget to vote on April 20th for the rent stabilization ordinance. We love Asbury Park.